History is full of ruthless conquerors who built empires on top of mass graves, but almost none of them reached the absolute peak of their military power, looked at the blood on their hands, and voluntarily dropped their weapon. That is the story of Emperor Ashoka of India. In his early reign, he was a man so consumed by violent ambition that ancient texts describe him building a literal, functioning hell on earth to torture his enemies. Yet today, the Mauryan ruler is revered as a global icon of compassion, non-violence, and Buddhist philosophy. To figure out how an ancient warlord built a lasting legacy of peace, we first have to measure the sheer depth of his cruelty. Our story starts in the 270s BCE. Ashoka was a prince, but he lived as an outcast. His father, King Bindusara, openly despised him because of his rough skin and physical flaws, heavily favoring his other sons for the throne. Ashoka's reaction to this rejection was a total, unyielding ambition. When his father died, Ashoka didn't just claim the crown. According to Buddhist texts, he systematically slaughtered his 99 half-brothers, even throwing his eldest brother into a live fire pit. Once he took control of the Mauryan Empire, he cemented his rule in the capital city of Pataliputra by constructing a beautiful, paradise-like palace. But inside, it housed a complex of horrors known to history as Ashoka's Hell. He hired a sadistic executioner named Girika to run the facility. Anyone who voiced a single word of opposition against the new emperor was dragged inside, subjected to vats of boiling oil, and skinned alive. Ashoka employed this extreme brutality as a core political tool. He intended to govern through absolute terror, ensuring his subjects were too traumatized to offer any resistance. By 261 BCE, his hunger for absolute power led his massive army to Kalinga, a wealthy, fiercely independent region on the eastern coast of India. The battle quickly moved beyond a standard military engagement into an outright massacre. Mauryan forces focused on the total annihilation of the Kalingan people, leaving no distinction between the enemy army and the local populace. This data shows exactly how devastating the campaign was. In a matter of days, 100,000 soldiers were killed outright. Another 150,000 civilians were violently uprooted and displaced, dwarfing the populations of most major ancient cities. The carnage was so absolute that contemporary texts report the water of the Daya River literally turning red from the sheer volume of human blood spilling into the current. Ashoka had achieved his military goal. He possessed absolute control over Kalinga. But the human cost of victory pushed the emperor's mind to a breaking point. At dusk, Ashoka rode out across the battlefield of Kalinga to survey his triumph. Instead of glory, he was met with the agonizing screams of orphaned children and the sight of rotting corpses stretching out to the horizon. Walking through this carnage, he was approached by a Buddhist monk named Upagupta. Surrounded by the dead, the monk forced the emperor to look closely at the true face of his ambition. Confronted with the physical reality of his victory, the emperor finally broke. According to historical records, the man who had shown no mercy for his own family dropped his sword and collapsed in the dirt in tears, openly weeping for the thousands of innocent people he had slaughtered. Ashoka had reached the zenith of his power, only to find that the sight of it made his crown unbearable. He had conquered Kalinga, but he would never lead an army into battle again. Right there in the dirt, Ashoka discarded his weapons. He swore a permanent oath to never wage war again, stripping away his identity as a violent conqueror to live as a monk. He immediately rewrote the legal foundation of his empire. He abolished Barigosha, the policy of military conquest, and replaced it with Dhammagosha, a strict state policy of peace, ethics, and compassion. To make sure his massive empire understood the new law, he literally carved these promises into the physical landscape. These stone edicts mandated sweeping social reforms. Ashoka ordered the construction of a vast network of roads to connect his people, poured state funds into building public hospitals, and even instituted strict bans on animal hunting. He funded massive monuments to peace, like the Great Stupas, and dispatched emissaries far beyond India's borders, directly helping to spread Buddhist philosophy across the Asian continent. Ashoka proved that human cruelty does not have to be a permanent condition. By the end of his life, the man who inflicted the ancient world's deepest wounds had dedicated every waking moment to becoming its greatest healer.